Once upon a time, you used to be able to say that reality has a left-wing bias without too much fear of contradiction. And that remains true when it comes to political policy and material concerns, which is frustrating because we know what works in a lot of policy areas, and we know how to do it, we know how to make it work, we have the statistics, we have the studies, we have the examples, and yet stubbornly politicians, and in many cases the voting public, refuse to do the things that work. One example of this is the prison system. Now, in Western countries, the prison system is supposed to be one based around reform. You serve your time, you get rehabilitated, you get released out into society, and you become a productive member of that society. This is not really the case in a lot of countries, particularly the US and the UK. That idea has been usurped. One of the most effective and productive prison systems in the world is that of Norway. In Norway, only about 25% of people who spend time in prison reoffend within 5 years. In the USA, the recidivism rate is about 78% after 5 years. In the UK, it's about 75% after 5 years. So Norway is doing something right. It's also doing something that, at a base kind of surface level analysis, is very expensive. Norway spends about 3 times the amount per prisoner that the US does, but the canny amongst you will have noticed that the recidivism rate is about a third of what it is in the US and UK. So in terms of total costs, time and so on, it's already looking pretty good, or at least about the same. But then Norway also imprisons less people. It has a lower crime rate overall, something which is associated with high levels of social investment in housing, welfare systems, and so on. So just the raw cost per prisoner isn't necessarily the only thing we have to look at, nor is the recidivism rate the only thing we have to look at. Norway is doing things as a society that cut down on the amount of crime, the amount of desperation, which tends to be what drives people to crime. Norway doesn't have capital punishment. It doesn't have life imprisonment. The maximum is 21 years, 30 years for crimes against humanity. Life only exists for military crimes. And the whole system is based around what Western justice systems are supposed to be based around: restorative justice. That is, compensation for the victims, meetings between victims and offender, giving victims a role in what happens to the offender. Your sentence can get extended. It's reviewed every 5 years, and if you don't show any sign of being rehabilitated, you can end up staying in there longer. But mostly it's a transparent system, and it is what it is. Prisoners are treated like human beings. They're offered opportunities for education and training and mental health support and so on, and support when they leave, all of which helps cut down on that recidivism rate. To a lot of people, this seems cushy. It seems light, because while the systems in the US and UK and elsewhere are supposed to be based around this same principle of restorative justice and rehabilitation, a conservative populace and conservative politicians have eroded that idea over time and turned our systems very much into punitive systems based around punishment, deterrence. It doesn't actually deter. There's plenty of studies showing that deterrence doesn't really work, even in the case of capital punishment. And revenge. This is exacerbated by the involvement of private capital in our prison systems, amounting to slave labour and a profit motive behind something that really shouldn't be based on that. Private businesses own or provide security to prisons and seek to extract value from prisoners rather than seeking to rehabilitate and re-educate them. There are cases of judges in the States handing down harsher sentences to particular facilities in exchange for backhanders from the people who run those facilities. A set amount of money is provided to an institution per prisoner by the state, or the federal system, or both. The prisons then undercut everything, food, repairs, everything, in order to extract profit from that, as well as exploiting the captive population for prison labour and gouging them enormously in the commissary as a rather literal captive market. So we know what works. Less incarceration, more focus on rehabilitation and restorative justice. In the long run, in the end, it all works out cheaper and more effective, and yet we don't do it because there seems to be this peculiar lack in some people's psychology where they would rather punish, they would rather spend more to treat some people very, very badly and not give them a chance, not give them hope, rather than spend less money overall in the long term to restore people to a decent place in society. I'm not sure how you overcome that if the raw facts themselves don't work. Sang.